The house had stood empty for 30 years. Its windows were boarded up, its porch sagged under the weight of time, and the garden had grown wild, vines creeping up the walls like skeletal fingers. The neighbors called it cursed. The realtor called it a fixer-upper. I called it home. I should have listened to the neighbors. The first night I heard the scratching. It started in the walls, a slow, methodical scraping like something dragging itself through the insulation. I told myself it was rats. But rats don't whisper. By the third night, the whispers had a voice. You shouldn't be here. I told myself it was the wind. The house was old after all. Drafty. Full of noises. But the voice wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from inside the room. I slept with the lights on after that. Then the gifts started appearing. First, it was a single rusted key on my nightstand. I hadn't put it there. Then a locket, tarnished silver, the clasp broken. Inside, a faded photograph of a little girl. Her eyes were scratched out. I threw it away. The next morning it was back on my pillow. The whispers grew louder. You're not alone. I stopped sleeping. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed darker, thicker, like they were swallowing the light. Sometimes I'd catch movement, just out of sight, just beyond the door. A flicker of something pale. A hand maybe. Or a face. I started locking my bedroom door. One night I woke to the sound of knocking. Not at the front door. At my bedroom door. 3 slow, deliberate raps. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The doorknob rattled. Once, twice, then went still. The next morning I found scratches on the outside of the door. Deep, jagged grooves like something had been clawing at the wood. I packed my bags that day. But when I tried to leave, the front door wouldn't open. The locks had been changed. The windows wouldn't budge. My phone had no signal. And then from upstairs I heard it. A child's laughter. The house didn't want me to leave. Wanted me to stay. Wanted me to see. So I climbed the stairs. The door to the attic was open. It hadn't been before. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of rot and something sweet like spoiled fruit. The floorboards creaked under my weight. And then I saw it. The chair. An old wooden rocking chair, its paint peeling. And in it, a figure, small, hunched, wrapped in a tattered dress. It turned its head. Not a child. Never a child. Its face was stretched too wide, its mouth split open in a grin that showed rows of needle-thin teeth. You're home, it whispered. I screamed. The house screamed back. The last thing I remember is the sound of the attic door slamming shut, and the rocking chair, creaking, back and forth, back and forth. I still hear it sometimes, even now, even here, because the house didn't let me leave. It just let me hide, and it's still looking for me. It's always looking. So if you hear scratching in the walls, if you find a rusted key on your nightstand, if something whispers your name in the dark, run, before the house finds you too. The end. I thought it was just the wind. That's what I told myself when the front door slammed shut behind me on my first night in the house. No draft, no latch, just a sudden final click like something had decided I was where I belonged. The realtor had called it a charming fixer-upper. That was one way to describe it. The paint peeled like sunburned skin. The floorboards sagged underfoot, and every surface seemed coated in a fine layer of dust that clung to my fingertips like ash. But the price was right, and after the divorce, I needed cheap walls around me, walls that didn't ask questions or remember who I used to be. The house sat at the end of a forgotten cul-de-sac, surrounded by trees that leaned inward as if eavesdropping. It had been empty for years, the realtor said. Owned by an old woman who died alone, childless, with no heirs. Still, there were things left behind. A rocking chair in the living room that creaked even when no one was near it. A mirror in the hallway that fogged up when no one had breathed on it. And the basement door, always unlocked, though I swear I locked it every night. At first, I blamed stress. Grief makes strange things seem normal. Makes you hear whispers in the silence. But then came the gifts. The first was a tooth. It appeared on my pillow one morning, nestled in the folds of the cotton like a favor from some grotesque fairy. Small, yellowed, worn down to the root. I threw it away without thinking much of it. Probably a memento from a previous tenant. Maybe even mine lost during sleep. But then came the photos. Old black and white snapshots, curled at the edges, tucked into my jacket pockets, between the pages of my books, under my teacup. Faces I didn't recognize. Some familiar in that uncanny way strangers sometimes are. A man with my eyes. A woman with my scar above her lip. Then the keys. 3 of them rusted and bent, each tied with a faded ribbon of different colors. 1 red, 1 blue, 1 green. They never stayed where I put them. One morning I found the red key inside the wall behind the kitchen sink, lodged deep in the plaster like it had grown there. The house changed slowly, imperceptibly at first. A door I could have sworn opened to the pantry now led to a small bedroom I'd never seen before. The wallpaper was peeling, but beneath it, scratched into the drywall, were names. Dozens of them. Some recent. Some so old they were illegible. My name wasn't there. Yet. I started sleeping less. The air grew heavier, especially at night. There was a smell, not quite rot, not quite mildew, but something deeper, older. Like wet earth mixed with bone. The whispering began shortly after. Not words at first. Just murmurs. A low tide of voices behind the walls. Then clearer. You're home. I would wake in the middle of the night to find my hands gripping the edge of the bed, knuckles white, heart hammering like I'd been running. The house wanted me awake. Wanted me listening. I tried to leave once. Packed a suitcase. Got halfway down the driveway before the engine died. The road behind me was gone, replaced by dense forest. When I turned back, the house loomed taller than before, its windows blinking like eyes adjusting to the light. That night I found a new gift. A photograph of me. Eyes closed. Lying in my bed. My mouth open in a scream I didn't remember making. I stopped trying to rationalize it after that. The house was watching. Learning. Mimicked me. I heard my own laugh echoing through the halls when I was alone. Saw my reflection blink slower than I did. Felt fingers brush my shoulder when I stood in front of mirrors. The rooms shifted more often now. The stairs twisted differently depending on which direction I approached them. The attic door, which I had sealed shut with nails and a dresser, was open one night, revealing a narrow staircase that hadn't been there before. At the top, a single chair. It faced the wall. On the seat, another photo. This time it was me again. But this time I was standing outside the house, looking in. There was writing on the back. You'll see us soon. Now I don't sleep. Can't. The house won't let me. It hums constantly now, a vibration in the bones. The walls pulse faintly when I press my hand to them, like a heartbeat buried too deep to die. The other voices have names now. Eleanor, Marcus, Lila, Thomas. They speak softly, offering advice, comfort. They've been here longer. They understand. Don't fight it, they say. You'll be part of the house soon. You already are. The last key appeared this morning. Green. I think it fits the attic door. Or maybe the basement. Either way, I know what waits below. Not death. Something worse. Something patient. The house doesn't want me dead. It wants me inside. To join the others. To become part of its walls. Its floors. Its voice. And when someone else comes looking, I will be the one to whisper, "You're home." The end. I didn't intend to buy a house alone. I'd always imagined it would be something I did with someone, some milestone reached after marriage or a career triumph. But then my grandmother died and I inherited this house. It stood at the edge of town, its bricks half swallowed by ivy and time, hunched like something remembering pain. Everyone called it the hollow house behind polite smiles. I only found out after I'd moved in. The first night was uneventful. A thunderstorm swept in just as I turned the key for the first time. I told myself the way the air shifted around me as I stepped inside was a draft. I told myself the smell, wet wood and something sweet rotting beneath, was mildew, not breath. The mirror. It was on the second day that I noticed the mirror at the end of the upstairs hallway. I hadn't put it there. No one had. It was old. Victorian maybe. The frame carved in delicate spirals like vines. I told myself the glass was warped, that's why I looked so odd in it. But the reflection didn't show the hallway behind me. It showed a door. A door that wasn't in the house. Packaged the gifts. They started arriving on the third night. The first was a silver key left on my pillow. I don't lock my bedroom door. I never have. But I told myself I must have dropped it unpacking. The next gift came a few days later. A small black and white photograph, frayed at the corners, of a woman standing on the front steps of this house. Her face looked like mine. But it couldn't be. She wore a dress decades out of date. And she was missing her eyes. Then came the tooth, small, yellowing, childlike. I found it inside the fridge. I began checking the locks each night. Every window. Every room. I always found something different. Sometimes a door I didn't remember closing would be open. Sometimes the kitchen chairs would face a new direction. Once, the basement steps were gone, replaced by a black drop and a whisper that seemed to come from the mold blooming behind the water heater. You're home. Door. The architecture shifts. Rooms changed. Not fast. Not obvious. Subtle things. The wallpaper in the upstairs bathroom, its patterns curled into shapes I didn't recognize. Symbols maybe. Letters not meant to be spoken aloud. The spare bedroom seemed larger. Or deeper. I walked in once and had to turn around because I couldn't see the far wall anymore. I measured it the next day. 10 feet. But at night, I could hear breathing coming from the other end. Slow. Guttural. Chair. The whispering chair. It sits at the bottom of the stairs, carved from dark cherry wood, its cushions worn like it had been sat in for decades. I tried to move it once. The next morning it was back. Closer to the stairs. I never sat in it. But sometimes when I passed it at night, it creaked as if someone had just stood up. We waited. Brain. The mind splits. I kept telling myself I was tired. That grief does strange things. That a house this old shifts and groans and smells and plays tricks. But then it started giving me things from my life. My high school ID card. A birthday card my mother gave me when I turned 10. My grandmother's old perfume bottle, empty, but still sharp with scent. None of these things had been in the house when I arrived. I stopped answering phone calls. The service began to cut in and out. The house didn't like interruptions. At some point I stopped going outside. The house preferred it that way. Old key. The final door. I found the door from the mirror 2 nights ago. It was in the attic, behind the water-damaged boxes and the rats. I didn't remember climbing the stairs. The house must have brought me. The door was locked. But I already had the key. When I turned it, the air grew wet. Heavy. A smell like meat left too long in a drain. Inside I found them. Clothes. A journal, rotted and soaked. Names I didn't recognize. One page still legible. I saw her face in the mirror. It smiled when I didn't. It wants to keep me. It loves me too much. In the center of the room, the chair. Facing a mirror. And in the mirror, not my face, but someone else wearing my skin, smiling too wide. Oh, I am home. I sleep now. A lot. The windows no longer show the outside. Only other rooms. The reflection smiles more often. I hear the chair creak behind me sometimes when I write. It leaves me new teeth. And last night, I woke up with a scratch on my arm in the shape of a word. Stay. Candle. The house on Thistle Lane. Not every home wants you to leave. Some want you to stay so badly, they'll reshape you until you can't tell where the floor ends and your skin begins.